pronouns today, and we are going to do more advanced topics in pronouns. Very briefly, we did pronouns in the first lecture, parts of speech, but today, as I said, we are going to look at more advanced topics. Now, there are two reasons for this. One is because pronouns are asked in GMAT and in CAT, and a lot of questions are asked in pronouns. And the second is that you might think that you know everything about pronouns and so you will be able to do it on your own. Well, that may be, but once you complete today's lecture, you are, I'm sure. Okay, so we are going to do pronouns today. Now, I'm sure you know what pronouns are. Pronouns are used to replace nouns. They are used instead of nouns. So instead of saying Jack went there, we say he gave it. Okay, so for Jack we use the pronoun he, and for I don't know, Sarah, we use the pronoun she, and so on. So that's the deal with pronouns. So let's discuss pronouns. The first thing that I want to discuss are the persons: the first person, the second person, and the third person. Now, what is a first person? A first person is the speaker, the person who's doing the talking. So if you look at this picture here, the girl is talking to the boy. The name of the girl is actually Susie, in case you don't know. This is from Calvin and Hobbes' strip. So Susie is talking to Calvin, and she's saying, hey Calvin, pass this secret note to Jessica, okay? So she's talking to Calvin. So Susie is the speaker of this sentence, and so Susie is the first person. So what is the first person? The first person is the person who's doing the talking, the speaker. And she is directly addressing Calvin, and so Calvin is the person the first person is talking to. So he, in this case, is the second person. So what is the second person? The second person is the listener of a sentence. So whenever the first person talks, and whoever he or she talks to is the second person. So in this case, this person here, his name is Calvin, and so Calvin is listening, and so Calvin is the second person. Now, the third person is the person the first person is talking about. So the person being referred to. So in this case, if you think about it, Jessica is the one who, for whom Susie is talking. So this person here, and we can have a picture of her also. So Jessica is the third person, the person the first person talks about. So that's the deal with persons. Now, an obvious question is, what's the deal with persons? Why are we supposed to be bothered about persons? The answer is, let's look at nouns. Okay, so let's look at any noun. So for example, let's look at a noun called Jack. Now, whether Jack is the first person or the second person or the third person, it does not matter if the word Jack is used. So for example, there's a little kid, you know, and I'm sure you've seen little kids talking about themselves using their names. So for example, a little kid says, Jack wants the ball, okay? So now, so Jack is talking about Jack, and Jack remains the same. So Jack is Jack. And if Jack is the second person, which means you're talking to this person, so how will you address this person? So you will say something like, hey Jack. Okay, so again, Jack remains the same. Now, let's say you're talking about Jack. So for example, you say, I gave Jack, and then you can carry on your sentence. So again, Jack remains the same. So what I'm trying to tell you is that the noun does not change its form. The noun remains the same, whether it is the first person or the second person or the third person. But if you look at pronouns, okay, so for example, the first person will be I, or it will be we, or it will be me, or it will be us. The second person will be you. The third person will be he, or a she, or a they. So basically what I'm saying is that the pronouns change their forms based on whether they are the first person, the second person, or the third person. So we need to look at pronouns from the person's perspective. So as we move on, you'll understand this more. The other thing that we need to discuss is something called the case of a pronoun. Now, what is the case of a pronoun? Case is the function or the role that a pronoun plays in a sentence. Is it acting as the subject of a sentence? In other words, is it doing the verb, or is it acting as an object? In other words, is it receiving the action of the verb? Again, if you compare pronouns with nouns, you will find that nouns, it does not matter whether they are the subject or the object. So for example, let's come back to Jack, okay? So let's say Jack went, and so Jack remains the same. Jack is the subject. But if you say I hit Jack, again Jack is Jack. If you say I gave it to Jack. Again, Jack remains the same. In the first case, Jack is the subject. In the second case, Jack is the object of the verb hit. In the third case, Jack is the object of a preposition, object of the preposition to. So, whether a noun is the subject or the object of a verb or the object of a preposition, it does not matter. The noun remains the same. However, if you compare it with a pronoun, so for example, let's say the first person. So first person is I, me, us. So if the first person is a subject, so I went wherever. Okay, so it is the subjective. Now, if it is the object, so for example, he hit me. So now I has become me. He gave it to me. Again, it is me. So if you look at it, so this is the subject, this is the object of a verb, and this is the object of a preposition. So pronouns change their forms based on what role they play in a sentence, and that is known as the case of a pronoun. So different cases are, as you can already see, the first one is subjective. It is also known as the nominative case. The second case is the objective. It is also known as the accusative case, and they are pretty self-explanatory, but I will go into the details. So subjective case, for example, is when the pronoun is acting as a subject. In other words, when it is doing the verb in a sentence. Objective case is when the pronoun receives the action of a verb. Okay, so for example, he gave me. So I'm receiving, the first person is receiving the action, and hence it is me. The third case is possessive, when you show possession or a sense of belonging or a sense of ownership. You don't worry, we will go into the details of each one. Then we have something called a reflexive pronoun, and then we have something called an intensive pronoun. An intensive pronoun is also known as an emphatic pronoun. Okay, and so that's a bad writing. It is also known as emphatic. Okay, so this is the intensive pronoun. This is also known as emphatic. We will go into the details of each one of these.